The whisper of the moonlit shadows. Under a sky painted with the soft glow of the full moon, Leela stood alone at the edge of the forest. Her long, dark hair fluttered gently in the night breeze, her silken dress shimmering in the moonlight. Her skin, bathed in the soft glow of the full moon, shimmered with an ethereal light. The fabric of her dress clung delicately to her form, revealing just a hint of her silhouette, as the cool night air kissed her exposed skin. She had always felt drawn to this place, as though the very air carried whispers of something she couldn't yet understand. It was on this night, when the moon shone its brightest, that she first saw him. He emerged from the shadows like a figure sculpted by darkness itself. Tall, with chiseled features and eyes that gleamed like molten silver, he seemed both otherworldly and impossibly real. His skin, pale as the moonlight, caught the light in a way that made him look ethereal, as if he were more of a dream than a man. Lila's breath caught in her throat as their gazes met. There was something magnetic about him, something ancient, dangerous, and yet deeply alluring. He smiled, and though it was soft, it held a promise of forbidden knowledge. "You've been waiting for me," he said, his voice like velvet, smooth and intoxicating, swirling around her senses. Leela's heart raced. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, though a part of her felt she knew exactly who he was. "Perhaps not," he replied, taking a step closer, the air between them thick with tension. "But I know what you need." Before she could speak, he reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against her wrist. The contact was electric, sending a shiver up her spine. His touch was gentle, yet powerful, as if he held the very essence of the night in his hands. "I offer you something more," he continued, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "Something beyond the realm of human experience, a power like none you have ever known." Leela's pulse quickened. Her lips parted, but words seemed to fail her, the world around them fading into a blur. She was drawn to him, to the mystery that clung to him like a cloak. It was as if the moon itself had conspired to bring them together. "What kind of power?" she managed to ask, her voice barely a breath. The man smiled, and there was a dark promise in it. "The kind that flows through the stars, the kind that bends reality to your will, a power that makes the impossible real, that makes the world tremble at your feet." Leela stepped closer, her body moving almost of its own accord. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, her voice a mixture of desire and curiosity. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear, sending a wave of warmth through her entire being. "I ask for nothing except your trust." Her heart thundered in her chest as his lips grazed her ear, his words igniting a flame within her. Her senses were overwhelmed, with him, with the promise of something beyond her understanding. "Let me show you," he whispered, pulling back just enough to meet her gaze. His silver eyes glimmered with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through her soul. Without another word, he lifted his hand, fingers hovering over her chest just above her heart. She felt a pulse of energy, soft at first, like the distant thrum of a drumbeat. Then it grew, spreading warmth through her veins, filling her with a heady power that she had never known. Her breath caught in her throat as the power flowed through her, through the very fabric of her being. It was intoxicating, like liquid fire, and she gasped, her body trembling as she leaned into him. The man's hand gently cupped her chin, tilting her face up to meet his. "This is only the beginning, Lila. What you now hold within you will shape your destiny. But remember," his voice dropped low, his lips nearly brushing hers, "with great power comes great temptation." And as their lips finally met, the kiss was like fire, both consuming and liberating. She surrendered to him, to the unknown, and in that moment Leela knew she had crossed a threshold she could never return from. The forest around them seemed to vanish, leaving only the two of them in a world where the rules of reality no longer applied. They were bound by something darker, something deeper, a bond that neither the stars nor time could ever break. Lila stood breathless in the arms of the man, the ethereal power swirling around her like a living thing. His kiss had ignited something within her, something primal and untamed. She felt alive in a way she never had before, her senses sharpened, her mind clearer than it had ever been. But with the power came an unsettling awareness, as though the world itself had shifted, and the boundaries between dreams and reality were no longer defined. The man pulled back slightly, his silver eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He studied her with an intensity that made her pulse race. "You feel it now," he murmured. "The power inside you. The blood of the stars flows through your veins. You are no longer just a woman. You are something more." Leela could hardly breathe, let alone speak. The force inside her was overwhelming, but strangely, it didn't terrify her. Instead, it felt like something she had been waiting for, something she'd longed for without knowing it. Yet, in the depth of her desire, there was a strange tug at the back of her mind, a whisper, a shadow lurking in the corners of her consciousness. "Who are you?" she breathed, finally finding her voice. "What do you want from me?" The man smiled, but this time it was colder, more distant. He stepped back, his figure fading into the moonlight like a wisp of smoke. "What I want, dear Lila, is nothing more than to see you reach your true potential, to see you embrace the power I've given you, and to see you accept your place in this world." He turned his back, walking a few paces, and then halted. "But you are not yet ready. There is a truth you must know before you can truly understand what you have become." Leela's heart skipped a beat. What truth? Her voice was soft, but the fear creeping up her spine was undeniable. There was something in his tone, something heavy, something unspoken. He looked over his shoulder, his eyes gleaming in the dark. "The power I've given you is not just a gift. It is a curse, a power that feeds not only on the stars but on the souls of those who wield it. And once you accept it fully, you will never be able to turn back." Lila's breath caught in her throat. A curse? She felt the power inside her flicker, a pulse of heat and ice in equal measure, and suddenly, the once welcome warmth of the magic turned sharp, cutting into her like 1,000 tiny knives. "What do you mean?" He walked back toward her, slow and deliberate, his steps heavy with the weight of his words. "It is not just the stars that you will draw power from, Lila. The magic will begin to consume you, just as it consumes everything it touches. The moment you accept this power fully, your soul will be bound to it, and to me." He reached for her again, but this time his touch was colder than before. "You will be mine, Leela, forever." The realization hit her like a thunderclap, a deep, chilling awareness creeping up from the depths of her being. The air around them seemed to darken, and the world began to warp, reality twisting like smoke in a breeze. Her body, still trembling from the kiss, now felt hollow, as if something was slowly draining from her, a piece of herself, a piece of her humanity. She stepped back, panic rising in her chest. No, I won't belong to you." He tilted his head, the smirk returning to his lips. "Oh, but you already do." Lila's heart pounded in her ears. She took another step back, but her body moved like it was no longer entirely her own. The power inside her twisted and thrummed with an unholy urgency, as if it were alive, pushing her toward him. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, an unfamiliar voice, distant but familiar, calling her name. "Leela." The man's expression flickered for a moment, a brief flash of something. Panic? Worry? But before Lila could react, he raised a hand, and the world around them cracked, shattering like glass. The landscape dissolved into nothingness, and Lila was surrounded by darkness. She gasped, her senses reeling. But then a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, radiant and powerful, with long flowing hair that shimmered like starlight. Her eyes were a deep knowing shade of violet, full of sorrow and strength. "Lila," the woman said again, her voice calm and steady. "You have to listen, he's deceiving you." Lila's head spun. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman smiled, her eyes filled with both kindness and warning. "I am the one who was bound to him long before you. I was once like you, seduced by his promises, drawn into his web. But I broke free, and so can you." Leela's heart clenched. "But I don't want to lose this power. It feels like part of me now." The woman's expression softened. "It is part of you, but not all of you. The power he offers is not true power, Lila. It is a hunger, an endless need that will consume you and everyone around you. You must break free before it takes everything from you, even your soul." Lila looked at the man who stood watching from the shadows, his smile now a cruel twist of fate. "What is he?" she whispered, the fear creeping back into her chest. The woman's voice was soft but grave. "He is a creature of darkness, born of the void, a being who feeds on souls, and once he has you completely, you will never escape." Lila's heart raced as the weight of the truth settled over her. The man was not the seductive lover he seemed to be. He was a predator, and she had been his prey all along. Her eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance igniting in her chest. "Then how do I break free?" she demanded. The woman smiled, a glimmer of hope in her violet eyes. "There is only one way, Lila. You must embrace the power within you, not as a gift but as a weapon. You must take control, and you must destroy him." Lila looked toward the man. He was watching her intently, his eyes filled with an unsettling calm. He knew she was beginning to understand. But it was already too late. Lila had made her choice.